Is it me or is it not me? That's the question. No, I'm not just bad in quotes. That's actually me. My real skull 3D printed. And if you want to see how I made that, follow along. Because like other famous quote said, you miss every shot that you make. You miss every shot. You don't miss the shots you don't take. Maybe I am bad in quotes. This is the 3D print lab of University Spital Basel. Here we do something that is called POC manufacturing. POC stands for point of care. The idea behind this is that you manufacture your parts where they are needed, at the point of care where your patients are. That helps to keep delivery times low. And in a business where delivery times can decide about life and death, that's always welcome. I tell you a little bit more about this lab later in this video, but now let's get to the fun. Behind me here is my friend and colleague Alex. Alex is a medical additive manufacturing specialist from Romania. Funny thing actually, when we first met, he told me that there is a prejudice around the world that people from Romania are known to steal. I, as a German, was unaware of it because we have these reservations against other nationalities. Leave a comment if this is a prejudice in your country. But Romanians are really trustworthy people. Especially Alex here. I would trust my life to him. Oh! See? So first order of business is to get my skull out of my head. But we can't just rip it open for a 3D scan, right? So that's why we actually use this. So this is a CBCT. CBCT stands for Cone Beam Computed Tomography. It's a specialized X-ray imaging technology that creates detailed 3D images of bone, teeth and surrounding structures in a single scan. It's commonly used in dentistry and maxillofacial imaging to provide clear, accurate and visual diagnosis for treatment planning. CBCT uses a cone-shaped X-ray beam that rotates around you, and the detector on the other side over there captures the slices, and when stacked together they create a detailed 3D image. But you guys have to wait outside while I get my scan, because we don't want you to get some radiation because of me. I will leave you in the capable hands of Alex.
The 3D Print Lab was established by Professor Florian Thüringer and his team back in 2017, and it's basically focused on craniomaxillofacial surgery, which is head and neck surgery, but we also provide services for other medical specialties, such as, for example, for orthopedics. In terms of services, we provide segmentation, which actually means reconstruction of 3D images starting from a CT scan or an MRI or a CBCT scan. Or we can, for example, also overlap dental scans with facial scans that are provided by our department by using specialized softwares and specialized intraoral and extraoral scanners. After this, we provide, of course, design if needed. For example, we can design the cutting guide or we can design the implant, but also then the final product would be 3D printed, and we can print, for example, anatomical models, which just means an actual replica of the images that were provided by the CT scanner or by the MRI, or we can, for example, create cutting guides, or we can create implants or personalized solutions for specific treatments for our patients. The biggest advantage of 3D printing at the point of care is actually being able to provide personalized treatment solutions in a very short span of time. So if we were to externalize our services and actually send our models to be 3D printed at a company, that will take about 2 or 3 weeks. But by having a 3D printing lab inside the hospital, we are able to provide the models or to provide the cutting guides or implants in about 2 or 3 days maximum. The most interesting case I have worked on in the past few months is that of a patient who had a stroke and they required a part of his skull to be removed to actually stop the brain from bleeding. After the bleeding was stopped, he required a personalized implant to be fitted to that spot because basically his bones started to resorb. So in that case, what we devised is actually a personalized implant that was 3D printed by using PEEK, and this was implanted in the patient. The real innovation of this implant was that it was printed inside the hospital by a printer which was inside the OR, and this was Europe's first implant to be printed inside the hospital by using a novel material which is called PEEK. The most weirdest case I have ever worked on is actually of a patient who stepped on the mine. So he basically had shrapnel all over his face and body. So what we had to do is actually we had to plan for every piece of shrapnel a precise way.
Is that normal?
The doctor should actually
Alex?
the shrapnel from
Alex! So now that we captured our images, we have to get all these different slices into a 3D model. That's what we use this program for. Maybe some of you already heard about Materialize. If some of you are in 3D printing, you're for sure heard of them. This is a program called Materialize Mimics. It takes these 3D slices, analyzes it for whatever tissue you want to compute, and produces a 3D model out of it. It's done by choosing so-called Hands-fill units. Hands-fill units is basically the gray value that the scanner or the Röntgen scanner got by taking the image against the detector. So what I'm doing right now, I add areas of the bone to the slice where the program actually missed it by the hands-filled value. So I tell him like, see, there is bone too. So it actually then tries to fill in those voids. As you can see here on the 3D model, it's basically live updating. It's a lot of work and I have to change contrast to see anything, but yeah, let's keep on it. So while I do the data, let me tell you about a little bit more of what we do here as work. So Alex already told you about the patient with the PEEK implant, the Europe's first PEEK implant point of care manufacturing. So he already told you this patient had an opening in his skull because the doctors had to get to his aneurysm to save his life actually. And they put his own skull back in. Can you imagine that? Like basically they cut it out, they took it out, they did their thing and then they put it back in and they simply just screwed it. Like this is an original model of preoperative MRI scan of the patient, and that was the state his like leftover skull implant was in. So it was his own bone, but when bone isn't alive anymore, so bone is actually connected to your bloodstream, and if it isn't, the body sees it as kind of a like foreign object and try to get rid of it. So it actually, we call it resorbs. It basically dissolves into your body. Your body eats your own bone. So as you can see here, it was attached with several screws to his skull and it just like lost its form completely. It resorbed into the body and you can actually see that on the patient itself. I will link the video that was done by the university hospital about this patient. I will link that down below so you can have a look on like the more serious way of presenting that. So this was the state the patient was before. We took that image that was done before the patient ever was opened in our facility here, and we basically got everything that is yellow segmented out and removed it digitally on the computer. And then we were left with a defect. So with this defect, we can then actually decide where we have to cut off additional bones. For example, something like that here, where you actually have to cut off a little bit of extra material because otherwise the implant would go over it or around it or it can't come out anymore. So we designed basically the whole operation like this edge has to be cleaned up and stuff like that. Then we got a skull of his defect, how we want it to look like in operation. And then somebody sits down and actually designs an implant like that. So the cool thing about this material, it's called PEEK. PEEK is polyether-ketone. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. If I remember correctly. And PEEK, maybe you heard about it because it's actually a super material where they use it in aerospace and a lot of it in medical. So actually using PEEK for that application isn't something like fairly new or something like that. We use PEEK implants a lot but milled, because 3D manufacturing so far wasn't certified for the long-term use in patients, only experimental ones. But we wanted to bring it to daily business, basically. PEEK is a chemically extremely stable material, so it will not leak anything into your bloodstream. Before that, we actually did molds where PMMA was molded in, so plexiglass, you could say. And this would leak monomers into your bloodstream. I mean, it's better than having a hole in your skull, right? But still, not good, right? So this implant gets manufactured in a sterile environment, already in the OR, but not with the patient there. It gets manufactured while the patient is still waiting for its operation. But it's pretty fast. We can do that in days now. And after it is manufactured, it actually gets cleaned up because you have support structures holding it. It's FDM nonetheless. You have support structure holding it, so the supports are removed, the margins are perfectly aligned to the 3D model of the defect of the patient. That's why we always segment it, so we can actually, before the patient ever goes into the operating theater, already test fit and see how that works, how we get it in, how perfectly it fits, and stuff like that. Also, we drill a lot of holes to release pressure from the brain. And this material is chemically super stable. It's not reacting to anything in your bloodstream, and it's also radio transparent, so it will not be in the way or not be seen by CT or Röntgen images. Also, it's super stable. I could jump on that. So it actually has the same characteristics and strength than cranial bone itself. So if you would break your skull, you will break this, of course. But other than that, it's a perfect fit. Done within days, perfectly specialized for each patient. And it's just a big improvement for the patient itself. Hopefully, I never need a cranial implant, but if I want for sure to get a PEEK implant, a 3D printed one. I mean, how cool is that to tell people I have 3D printing in my head? Okay. Let's get back to the data. I got a bit carried away while removing the supports and talked to you guys about several things like curiosity, some medical facts about skulls and stuff like that. If you want to skip that, please go to that timestamp. Otherwise, sit through me through a, I would say, meditating session of support removal and talking. Maybe that could be a form on this channel that I talk about stuff. Like my phone is interrupting me, I'm sorry. Yeah, so if you want to see it, go ahead. If you don't want to see it, skip to that and we finish the video with you guys. So it is finished. It looks very good. How cool is it to have your own skull? So now the fun part begins. Removing the support. Oh. I've gone for 3 supports and I set it to only from the surface, like from the build plate, just to save a little bit of support in the inside where I can't get to it. I have some defects on the back of my hand and here where just the bone got too thin. It could be a segmenting issue or it is a printing issue, like that the bone is that thin, but I can't imagine that I basically have no bone on the backside. So let's see how we get that off without breaking anything. Normally these should detach fairly easy, even from the part. Oh, nice. Nice. That should go well. That comes off beautifully. Let me get you a little bit closer. So these little holes you see here, they're actually real and they are in your skull and they are pretty important. Also the little ones here, that's where your nerves come. Like this nerve here, it goes through the inside of the mandible here and comes out here. So that's a nerve ending. And here, the nerves go inside of your skull. So also you see that the skull looks a little bit like he would raise his eyebrows on both sides actually. But the thing about this is that there are also nerves going into your body here. And also these little holes back here, like down here, that's where the water flows out when you're crying. And like back there, it's obviously where your eyesight nerve is going. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see how a real skull is made. I'm relatively used to it through my work now, but still amazing to see my own skull with all its features. Can you recognize me? I might have lost some weight. Oh, I love the Bambu Lab printer. Just that feature, that the supports go off that easily, is already worth the price tag of this printer. By the way, if you want me to do a review of the Bambu Lab printer, please let me know. I'm a 3D printing professional with 10 years of experience in 3D printing. That's my vertebra. I think that came out super well. You can see all my individual vertebrae. You can see where like the middle is where all your nerves go down from your brainstem to like control your body. And I think it's like super nice. I broke it off, but I can now adjust it. Or I can now, I killed myself. How cool is it that that is me? But if you look here, I sleep so less because of you guys, because I have to do these videos, that even my skull has eye bags. I just cut myself. Damn, that thing is sharp. I barely touched myself.